Hello, I'm Alex with a company called STYNGR. We're about maybe 4 years old or so. We are a joint venture between the majors. So we operate between Sony, Warner, Universal, and we create technology and infrastructure and have a blanket rights legal side that allows us to get music into video games in a very seamless way. So we're the guts, the plumbing, and the architecture for video games, as well as a blanket rights structure so that they don't have to deal with labels, publishing, PROs, CMOs, things of this nature. So I'm just going to walk you through what we do quickly. So world of gaming, very huge, very fractional. I mean, compared, the total addressable market of gaming versus music is dramatically larger. Gaming is going to be about 400 billion this year. Recorded music somewhere between 25 to 40 billion. So the most dominant of the entertainment fields is gaming. And then the world of music, also very fractional, right? Label rights, publishing rights, PROs. And the two have been working with one another on a sync basis for probably, I don't know, since video games came about, certainly since early EA Sports days. But it hasn't really hit scale. Over the pandemic, was referenced earlier, the Travis Scott concert, we were seeing these worlds squeeze together in a pretty dramatic way, breaking some human records. And we're there to just be infrastructure and help people through. So we have, for the technologists in the room, API and SDK infrastructures. For the non-technologists, just simple software that video games can socket into and pull music in from the underground into their experiences. And then on the other side of it, typically if you're a gaming platform and you are interfacing with the majors and you want to get music on your platform, let's say you're Epic Games, the majors are going to require a very large minimum guarantee that can range anywhere from $10 million, can range up to past $150 million. If you don't want to go through things like that to do blanket licenses, or you don't want to build things like usage reporting or things like this, we also create some infrastructure around this as well. There's a couple of different buckets, both on the video gaming side to consider here and then on the music side. So on the music side, in the realm of sync, typically what games do is they'll sync license anywhere between 1 to, say, 50 tracks. That can either go into something like Grand Theft Auto, where it's a radio, or this can go into a single video ad, which is promoting the game. For that, they'll typically have to do sync licensing either through one label or labels and publishers both. On the gaming side, gaming platforms are starting to change a little bit nowadays. A lot of it's infrastructure so people can build their own games on top of it. Roblox is a great example of this, right? Roblox actually isn't a game itself. It's a game engine that's very simple to use where people make their own miniature games or experiences on top of that engine. So if you're licensing to them, you're actually not licensing to Roblox typically. You're licensing to the individual creators that sit on top of it. It's not dissimilar to Twitch, for example, where you would need to license a song for an individual creator to use in a stream, and you'd whitelist the URL of that stream. It's probably been touched upon a lot today, but I don't need to get into it too much. But music licensing is really, really sticky, right? There's the label side. They have their own incentivizations, financial being one of them, but also promotion of artists. There's the publishing side with the composers and the writers. Typically, you're registered to a larger entity, whether it's a major or an independent. And thus, I feel like at an artist level, you don't necessarily have a lot of agency to get your music into these unless you're doing direct licensing to one of these platforms. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Mic 3.
I've got mic 2.
Hello, testing now. Here we go. Okay. Anybody has questions for Alex? Anyone?
Yeah, and it's very conversational, so anybody can ask whatever they want at any point. Feel free, please.
Just raise your hand. Okay, sure. Oh, there's the mic there. Fantastic. Thank you, hon.
Okay, so you said you have an infrastructure set up when you're trying to deal with the majors. So how do you work when you're dealing with one-stop, easy, clear boutique firms that have everything accessible for you? Do you create some kind of infrastructure with them as a company?
Well, a lot of what we do is we work administration through the majors like a Warner or a Chapel, and they'll administer through a service like a Seven Digital, Audible Magic, something like this that passes through the actual song and does the mapping. On our side, we actually do work with indies now too. We have deals with Merlin, who cover the majority of indie labels, Believe, who sit on top of thousands of indie labels as well, and also independent publishers too, like Downtown. Downtown's a great example. We just launched a Web3-based music product with them. So if you have cleared catalogs, if you have catalogs and units for which you own 100%, right, label side, publishing side, there is a lot of opportunity there. I would say some of the biggest, in our world, in video games, the biggest opportunity is probably global. So for North America and Europe, and even to a degree LATAM, it's easier to clear and do mapping on the publishing side. For places like MENA or Southeast Asia, it actually becomes really, really complex. So that's where those 100 catalogs are really, really valuable. We do have a space for that where we can socket folks in. We don't do it often, but we can.
Okay, now because we have a catalog, and so what we do is we work with a lot of different aspects. So at some point, we'd love to get into a conversation.
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's excellent.
Thank you. Any other questions?
It seems like you guys are primarily focused on gaming right now, but do you integrate with other types of mediums? Like I'm a founder of an AI company, we have an app, I'm already thinking about ideas for how we could potentially leverage convenient licensing for a catalog of other people's music. You have an API. Is it licensing just for gaming or for other types of things?
That's a good question. And again, because our investors and our partners are the majors, right? Like we tend to come at things from that lens. They being the recorded music side, tend to put things in verticals, right? Like gaming is a big vertical point of focus. Fitness during the pandemic in particular, right, became an enormous vertical. Peloton started making an enormous amount of money for the recorded music industry. We have talked about things that are tangential around gaming. So for instance, integration into engines, software engines, that produce things that are non-games. So it's possible. It's not necessarily an area of focus right now, but it's not, in that regard, things can be negotiable depending on what the consumer offering looks like. Yes.
Verticals besides gaming, fitness. Could you mention other verticals, please?
Oh, of course. So the question was, what additional verticals are there outside of gaming and fitness? I think film and television tends to have its own sort of, and streaming has its own vertical that's looked at. Sometimes those cross over. For instance, a great example would be Riot Games. They launched what is Netflix, I think Netflix's most popular series. It beat Squid Games, which is called Arcane, which is based around League of Legends. They'll do crossover licensing between the two verticals. But in general, film and television and streaming are considered their own vertical. On top of that, you would have things like what the public performance, like what the PROs do, right? So we're all in a bar, there's music playing, and who records the usage of that music to ensure that the composers and the artists are compensated fairly. Those are sort of some of the primary ones that come to mind. Sports is another, but I'm sure there's many, many others as well.
And you guys sit between record labels and these different verticals?
We sit between the record labels and publishing and specifically the gaming vertical. Although there's plenty of entities that work in between those other verticals as well. I feel like there's actually one that Warner that partnered with Warner pretty recently. That's specifically music for startups. So if you are licensing, you're a startup, you don't want to pay astronomical fees for your music. You're in more test and experimentation mode. There are companies out there that will give you a vehicle to get some of this music and experiment with it until you hit a certain volume of users.
Thank you.
Of course.